everybody, JJ's Rambling About Comics and Stuff here, back with another edition of I Will Tell You. And this week I will tell you why Chris Claremont, John Byrne, and Terry Austin's run on Uncanny X-Men was hands down the best run in the history of the title. There's not many actually who would disagree with that, but in this installment I'm going to tell you why that run was so legendary. So one has to go back to the history of the title. After it was revamped, it was originally writer Len Wein and artist Dave Cockrum who revamped the team. And after Len Wein's one issue, writer Chris Claremont took over and basically established the dynamic of the team going forward for the next several decades. Claremont was joined by Cockrum, and Cockrum, just as importantly, established the look of the team and designed all of the characters that were on the team. Cockrum was on the book probably for a dozen or so issues when Byrne then took over for him and basically ran with it. Now, what one has to understand is John Byrne had a very unenviable task, right? Dave Cockrum was already a popular artist, and his work on Uncanny X-Men, although it wasn't called Uncanny yet, was really well received by fans. And Byrne not only had to take over for a established, well-known artist, but he had to do so for the final part of a very far-reaching storyline. The storyline was the first Starjammer saga in Uncanny X-Men. And many of the characters, in fact, in addition to the X-Men, were also designed by Dave Cockrum, because that storyline featured the Shire Empire's Imperial Guard. And the Imperial Guard, many felt, bore a rather, shall we say, uncanny resemblance to Dave Cockrum's Legion of Superheroes, because Cockrum was already well known for his work at DC Comics on the Legion of Superheroes a few years earlier. So Byrne not only had to come in and take over for a legendary artist, but he had to render all of the characters designed by him. But as everyone knows who's read X-Men number 108, which was John Byrne's first issue, Byrne grabbed the bull by the horns and just crushed it. He was not only faithful to Cockrum's designs, but he gave them a kind of a gloss, a sheen that made them look even more impressive. And inker Terry Austin, who joined Byrne at the same time on the title, played a large part in that as well. So with the work already established by Dave Cockrum, Byrne and Austin joined Claremont and ushered in an era of storytelling excellence on the title that had rarely been seen before, and some would argue since. When the Starjammer saga was done, Byrne then got to render a lot of more familiar characters, like villains like Mesmero and Sauron, and of course Magneto. So Magneto had faced the team once before, the new team, back in Uncanny number 104 during Dave Cockrum's run. But that issue wasn't so much a battle between Magneto and the team as it was kind of a reintroduction of the character, because when the X-Men had been on hiatus prior to the revamp, Magneto was just kind of bouncing around different corners of the Marvel universe. He appeared in the Avengers, he appeared in Defenders, and kind of Claremont's story basically just said, hey, Magneto's here, he's still the X-Men's arch foe, even though it's a different team. So when X-Men number 112 came along, Claremont, Byrne, and Austin reintroduced Magneto basically as an outright villain who was back to truly take on the team in a far more heated battle. and more so, Magneto wasn't just the typical megalomaniac type villain like most supervillains had always been. Under Claremont, Byrne, and Austin, he went from just being a power hungry supervillain to one who, how better to say it, he was almost a sadist and genuinely evil. Because what for those who I'm sure remember, the battle in X-Men number 112 was pretty brutal. It did not go well for the X-Men. Magneto made short work of the still rather unfocused team and defeated them handily. And defeating them wasn't enough. He had to make them suffer. And so his intent was to imprison the team forevermore. Not only imprison them, but ensure that their physical capabilities were no more of that of an infant. A fate that Magneto himself had suffered a few years earlier in Defenders, I believe it was. So Magneto was pretty badass at that point. And in the following issue, number 113, was the rematch. And thanks to Storm's ingenuity and Cyclops' leadership, the team got forged into a true fighting unit that basically handed Magneto's ass back to him after the team's defeat in the prior issue. So what also happened between issues 112 and 113 is that Marvel promoted the title from bi-monthly to monthly status. Always a sign that a book is selling well and is popular, and it was very much a testament to the creative efforts of Claremont, Byrne, and Austin. For the first time in X-Men's history, it became a fan favorite title, and I even say it, probably fandom's first hot comic. So after that, the creative trio went on to create other new characters. The Shadow King and Arcade and Canada's Alpha Flight. And perhaps most importantly, Kitty Pryde, who went on to become a member of the team, but all of those characters became notable parts of the X-Men mythos. And then, after that, came the Dark Phoenix saga. So, going back to Cockrum's run again, Claremont had already transformed Jean Grey into the Phoenix entity. And under the stewardship of all three creators now, Claremont further evolved Jean Grey, Phoenix, into Dark Phoenix. It was a tragic transformation of one of Marvel's earliest legacy characters and a founding member of the team. It was a very engaging and ever increasingly tragic storyline that grabbed readers, and Jean's tragic and sorrowful sacrifice at the end, and her very emotional farewell to Scott. That scene became one of comics' all-time greatest death scenes, and that heartbreaking story cemented itself as what many feel was the greatest story arc of Claremont, Byrne, and Austin's run, which in turn already at this point was already being regarded as the greatest run on the title up to that point. Now, that arc would have served as a tremendous send-off to Byrne and Austin because they were nearing the end of the run at that point. But they still had one more epic story to tell. And that, of course, was the Days of Future Past saga that unfolded just a few months later. Days of Future Past took readers' breath away before they even had fully collected it again in aftermath of the Dark Phoenix saga. The storyline was incredibly horrific, telling the story of a dystopic future where most of the X-Men had already been killed, and most of those, or those who were not, were enslaved and held prisoner by the Sentinels, which had decided to take over the entire North American continent. That future, thankfully, was averted by the present day X-Men. In the storyline unfolded in Uncanny number 141 and 142, and while the future was averted, it went on to serve as fertile ground for many more such storylines, and kind of was a template for the way dark future storylines were treated going forward in comics. So that could have been a great send-off for Byrne and Austin, but they had one more story to tell. And perhaps in comparison to the epic stories they had told prior, X-Men number 143, the art team's final issue, was a comparatively smaller scale and more, I guess, down-to-earth tale. That was a solo tale of Kitty Pryde fighting off this horrific monster on Christmas Eve in the X Mansion while the X-Men were off celebrating the holidays. So it was a very nice epilogue to a 3-year run on the title by Byrne and Austin, and the duo left the title, but it was still in the capable hands of Claremont. And in fact, Dave Cockrum even returned to draw the comic for several more issues afterwards. Claremont still had a decade's worth of stories left to tell, and he did under capable artists after Cockrum, like John Romita Jr. and Paul Smith and many others. And many of the stories he told went on to become arguably just as legendary. The Mutant Massacre and Inferno long have influenced future storylines in the X-Men. But I think it's kind of safe to say that as amazing and maybe even groundbreaking as those stories were, they just didn't quite match up to the excellence of Claremont's storytelling with John Byrne and Terry Austin at his side. So that run on the title, which ran through issues number 108 to 143, truly was legendary and groundbreaking. And while in the decades since there have been a lot of amazing runs on the title, which I think I will talk about on future installments, the Claremont Byrne Austin run on the title, hands down, is absolutely the best of all time, and maybe even one of the best runs in comics. So that's it for this week, gang. For this week's edition of I Will Tell You, there's more to come. Talk about the X-Men more in the future. So everyone, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. And this is JJ Ramblings About Comics and Stuff out. See ya.